When I first learned what LLMs could do, I thought we were headed toward a new frontier of the user interface. I thought all of our interactions would be replaced by natural language, forget about form fields, drag and drops, WYSIWYG editors, etc. What could be a more intuitive experience than using your own words? That was very untrue.
Our guest today is Alexandra Holness, Senior Lead Product Designer at Klaviyo. We're diving into how AI is disrupting the design and product delivery process.
This is the first time in my career that I have worked with technology or worked in a horizon or a future that I actually don't know what that looks like. There's not much I can really learn from or model after. We're literally figuring it out as we go. So by necessity, we have to change the way we play with that technology and plan for that technology.
In our conversation, we discuss her journey exploring what AI is capable of and how she created her role leading AI design initiatives. The assumptions her team had about how to leverage AI and how they often were proven wrong. What works and what doesn't work from a product design perspective. We talk about how AI models are so nascent that it's hard to design a UX around them, but even harder for customers to imagine what's possible. We discuss designers, data teams, engineers having to work together in entirely new ways, and how building AI products is very different than the traditional product delivery, requiring you to create even more testing and feedback loops. We discuss why building effective AI products will require team cultures to change. And finally, why a vision-forward approach to AI, testing out potential futures, is more important than ever. If you like content like this about how to build AI products, please remember to subscribe to us on your favorite channel, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. And if you have any questions, please find us on LinkedIn at Design of AI. And to get more articles, insights, and resources, find us on Substack.
This Design of AI episode is brought to you by PH1 Research, an innovation research consultancy that specializes in turning business questions into product decisions. Over the last decade, PH1 has helped client teams discover, conceptualize, and test product improvements and net new ideas. This has included executive briefings about how to leverage AI and researching which specific use cases and tools your customers want. PH1 has worked on projects for Spotify, Microsoft, the National Football League, Dell, Mozilla, Bell, and various health and higher education groups. With capabilities across product discovery research, service design, rapid prototyping, and in-market testing, PH1 has been a key ally of product and product marketing teams. Visit their website to book an intro call, www.ph1.ca.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's going to be great to dive into how design and product are being disrupted. Alex, leading design initiatives at Klaviyo, this is something more and more designers are being asked to learn more about. How did you end up in that role? And how did you end up learning so much about AI and how to design for AI?
I would say a bit by accident and a bit on purpose. So in late 22, early 23, when ChatGPT was really taking off, we were all looking into how this new technology might impact our product, our experiences, even our lives. Klaviyo had already been leveraging AI in various tooling. It wasn't new to our company at all, but we wanted to see what new possibilities were now available to us. So I was playing with GPT and I asked it for instructions on how to perform a particularly complicated task in our product. And it gave me those instructions fairly accurately. I then asked it to translate those instructions into a data file. And I kind of scrambled around for a little bit with engineers and data scientists to get this file that it was producing to work in a way that our system could ingest it so as to finish that task automatically in our product. And we were able to get it to work pretty accurately, pretty easily. So that set off fireworks for us. That set off a big light bulb that this technology could do more than just generate words, ideas, and content, which is how I think most people engage with it, but rather it could really change the way that we interact with computers. It could basically take someone's own word and automatically perform complicated interaction on behalf of the user, which is pretty mind-blowing, or was pretty mind-blowing to think about from a design standpoint. So put another way, instead of talking to the computer in a language of clicks and form fields and drop-downs and buttons, I could instead just talk to it using my own words. And that really drastically changes the canvas and the toolkit that we have as designers when designing user interfaces. So once we discovered that capability, along with many other companies and people, I drafted up some wireframes that illustrated the variety of ways that this could significantly simplify our user experience. And soon enough, I was hooked into our data science team, and we were building out proof of concepts. And I've been kind of driving the design side of our AI initiatives ever since. The bulk of my focus has been in the generative AI space. And with that landscape changing every single day, I'm pretty much just learning this all on the fly, along with everyone else in real time.
That sounds like you've effectively created your role. Is that true? That's amazing that you prove that there's value exploring this technology. Though, why did you think that your organization valued design and gave you a seat at the table designing the future of the business?
Yeah, I think before this, my role as a senior lead at Klaviyo has always been working on cross-system initiatives and figuring out how to make our user experience just better and how to design our end-to-end experience. And tapping into AI as a tool just kind of paved a new niche for myself on the team and a new focus area to dive into. We did have a lot of tooling already in existence that used AI, but it really became a fully fledged initiative in the last couple of years, being kind of on the ground floor with data scientists and engineers as a designer to really just charter the path of what that could look like, really helped secure my seat at the table.
What was your role before you moved into taking over AI design initiatives? And how was your organization thinking about AI?
So we have an intelligence pillar that was already established, which was the main branch that was creating all of our AI and machine learning tooling alongside our reporting and our analytics offerings. So we did have designers who were embedded in that space and design leaders who are in that space, but the generative AI capabilities were still at the beginning stages. So we had a subject line generator as a tool that was already in the product. But beyond that, our tooling really focused more in content creation, less so interactions and object creation and task performing using generative AI.
And just to give a bit more context to people, what is Klaviyo and why are your customers coming to your platform? Just so they understand how important these tools and products are that you're launching.
So Klaviyo is a marketing and data platform where our customers range from small business owners, entrepreneurs, to large scale companies that are basically looking to build personal and real relationships with their customers through various marketing tactics, primarily that being email and SMS. So our customers are turning to us to figure out how to communicate and build that relationship with their customers in a way that's meaningful and personal. And that's what Klaviyo aims to enable.
And can you give us some examples of the types of products or features that you've been involved with since moving into this AI capacity?
The first big tool that we released last year was the ability to create segments in Klaviyo using natural language. So segments are basically groups of your customers. If you are a business owner or a marketer, you can segment your audience in various ways. And that process of building out a segment traditionally in Klaviyo involves setting up various logical conditions. It requires learning a tool of and/or logic, and that can be tricky for some users to learn. And what that tool basically did is instead of learning that interface, you can just tell us and describe the audience you're trying to segment, and AI will generate that for you. The second one was the ability to generate a part of an email template, the design of it using natural language. So we have a drag and drop editor that customers typically use to design their emails. What this tool then did was allow you, especially if you're a non-designer, to create that email template using your own words. You could just describe the look and the feel and the content of what you wanted to create, and the tool would just create it for you. And then lastly, a more recent release has been the ability to get help and support and navigate our help center using natural language rather than traditional search or going into our help center.
Amazing. So I'd love to know, we're talking about AI here and obviously how you're building products, but what are some of the tools or products you've built into your own design workflows? Are there any that you rely on, that you love, that blown your mind or disappointed you?
For one, I would say ChatGPT is probably always open on my computer. I just use it on the daily for synthesizing information and learning. I use AI-powered search tools pretty regularly, various writing tools like Grammarly, Omnipilot that follow me wherever I go on my computer and help that writing process. From a design standpoint, specifically, I do use a few Figma plugins that help me generate placeholder copy, imagery, maybe help me whip up some brainstorming tools. I've dabbled in tools that actually build out workflows and wireframes, but so far, I've found at least that that's kind of where AI falls short in the design process. There are aspects to design that are pretty routine and can be easily outsourced, but there's also so much of the design process that requires strategic thinking, a lot of context, a lot of critical thinking, and that's where I think humans or designers still kind of have the upper hand, and the AI tooling is at least not there yet. So in general, I would say I've been leveraging AI tools to help me automate those rote tasks or help unblock me if I'm creatively stuck or if I just want a quick first draft of something.
It sounds that the capabilities of those design tools is more so as like going out and finding community resources and figure out which is the best one for you. They're not really solving problems that community hasn't already solved in some form.
I think figuring out where in your workflow you want to outsource or you need a little extra inspiration is probably the best way to approach it rather than thinking, is there an AI tool out there that can completely replace the entire design process? I think that's a bit of an unreasonable expectation of AI. I would think about it more as parts of the design process might be replaced or augmented using different tools. So for me, at least, I've kind of pieced together different tooling at different moments in my process.
So thinking about the different tools that you're using, but also this changing relationship with data science, analysts, engineers, in what ways do you feel like this has shifted the role of design within product teams? And how do you feel that designers need to adjust the way that they're working?
On a traditional product team, the process might loosely follow this structure. So it might be do some product discovery, identify a problem, draft some solutions, test a prototype with users, scope the solution with your engineers and your PM, refine and release. You'll inevitably take steps forwards and backwards in that process. But overall, I would say it's pretty linear. At least now that I worked in the AI space, it feels linear by comparison. The process in AI is far more messy. The problems you choose to solve and how you solve them are largely influenced by what your AI model can do and how well it can do it. And that capability can change by the day, by the hour. One little adjustment to your model or one little advance from the industry can drastically change your model's capabilities. So as a designer, you really need to stay in lockstep with your data scientists and engineers. as you learn what users want and expect out of your tool, you can use that to influence how the model is trained. And then in the reverse, how the model is trained and how it evolves will inevitably influence the user experience you're designing. So it's really more of a dance between design and data science and engineering than it ever has been before.
It sounds like it's finally kind of moving beyond the waterfall. I know we keep saying that we moved beyond waterfall like decades ago, but this idea of just map something out, design it, ship it, it's done, it's kind of over because you might ship something, it might do something completely different than you expect. Your data team's constantly feeding you back insights. Oh, it's not working as you planned, or it's giving too much of this or not enough of that, or there's a new technology. So it sounds like quite a transformational change. What was something really hard about making this shift?
It's very different than what I've experienced before. There's a lot of pivoting back and forth that can be dismantling at first as a designer. I've really had to let go of my emotional attachment to my designs more than I ever have before. When you are switching directions and pivoting left and right up until the final moment, you really can't hold any one solution in too high a regard. You have to be ready to let go of previously held opinions and truths and really challenge your own assumptions constantly. There are also times when you kind of have to actually scrap what you think might be this really awesome user experience because the tech just simply isn't there yet. And that can be a tough pill to swallow for a designer as well. So there's a lot of paper cuts that happen along the way and corners that might need to be cut as you make your way to that great experience. It just might not happen right out of the gate because of the nature of the technology. But what's exciting is that it's all brand new stuff and we're all learning on the fly, and the possibilities of what this user experience can be is really changing by the day.
It sounds like you're kind of designing without like a roadmap in a sense, where designers for the last 10 years have been building, oh, like there's a system we're building to, or these other guys have done this before and let's try to match what they're doing, or we know that this works. It sounds like right now it's just, you don't know what's on the other side.
It does feel like that often, especially in the beginning when we were first releasing. We were taking a lot of wild guesses. We didn't know how users were going to engage with this technology. We didn't really know what role natural language played in a user interface and the length that we could or couldn't take it. So it is largely a guessing game in the beginning of, here's how we think you might want to use this tool. Here's a cool application of this technology. But we really don't know much of anything until it's live.
When we're researching which AI products or tools customers want, we find that traditional research just doesn't do well, right? Users are really good at explaining things that they don't like, but they really struggle to imagine potential innovation. They can help frame which solutions you should do, but not necessarily how it should be designed or how much they'd use it. How did your team decide which use cases to focus on and how to design those solutions, given so many question marks?
Yeah, very rare is the user that I speak to who is struggling with a problem and says, hey, this would be a really cool place for AI. AI just really isn't in anyone's mental model yet. Users aren't really asking for it. And in fact, a lot of users are skeptical of it and definitively don't want it. So that makes things a bit difficult when it comes to research as well. When we do try to do traditional upfront research, a lot of times I'll go into a user interview with an AI concept, and I'm hoping to get a sense of how they might interact with the model or the tool, what kind of value it brings, what the experience should be. And we'll try to get that answer out of them. But typically what we get in response is a lot of hesitancy of, I don't know what I would write in this tool. What can the model do? Or what is the model good at? What's it not good at? And at that point, we kind of have to say, well, we don't know yet. We haven't built it yet. We just first need to know how you would use it. And the user can't really tell us how they would use it because they don't know what it does yet. So it's this chicken or the egg conversation of what comes first, the model or the user experience? And it's really hard to suss that out in traditional research. There's only so much information you can gather up front about what to build and how to build it. And at a certain point, you just have to build it. Your goal is really just to get the leanest possible data live as quickly as possible. So your early design decisions are very, very scope dependent. What's the fastest way to get this model in prod and live in the hands of some users? Once it's live, that's when the real research begins. That's when you can learn your real use cases and what your MVP really should be and how it should be designed. So because of that too, I would say it's very critical that you're working with a team that is ready to budget a bulk of work post-release. There's inevitably going to be design dead, if not full-on design overhauls that have to happen post-release because there was only so much you could learn up front. And you really can't fall in that trap of release and move on, which a lot of product teams do fall in that trap. It's so critical that you continue to iterate and evolve.
That must have been agonizing for teams to shift from this idea of like, yeah, it's done to it's never done.
It's really never done.
How did that shift happen? Because I can think of dozens of teams where we worked with where the assumption is it's fine, just let it go, just move on to the next thing. Like, how does that work? And from a research perspective, it must be such a big shift for them to operate in this kind of framework too.
Well, not only is it difficult for any product team, it's even particularly difficult for AI product teams because the industry is moving so fast and the capabilities are changing so fast. There's so much we can build. So it's easy to want to shift to the next project and build the next cool application of this and then forget about the tool that you just released. So yeah, it's definitely a tough thing to kind of adapt to. But as long as your product team kind of knows this going in and we're all bought into the idea of, hey, we made a big gamble here. We are going to release something, we're going to put a big fat beta on it. It is very much in its infancy. If you have that buy-in from the beginning and you know that the release is not the end game, the release is the starting point, then you know that you still have a long road ahead with that tool. It's a very much not waterfall. So there is no beginning and end point. The end point is the beginning. So you just have to have that collective buy-in from the get-go.
When we're talking about some really interesting things, especially for people who are maybe wanting to get into more of the AI product side, but some pretty big cultural shifts that need to happen. What did that look like within your organization to make some of those cultural shifts around being open to this idea of things never being done, to, putting something out that you really don't know much about and knowing that you're going to have this culture of learning once it's live? Like, how did that look like in reality?
I would say in reality, it's still happening. This new way of working is new to us. It's new to the product teams that I engage with. And it's something that we are adapting to in real time. And especially, a lot of our initiatives in the GenAI space we started out more of a tiger team and we kind of operated outside the usual PDLC of our company. But as this initiative has really grown and gained legitimacy and investment, we are very much ingrained in our product org. So there are certain processes that we have to subscribe to, and that can be difficult and sometimes at odds with the way we want or need to work as a team. We're still figuring out how to operate as a tiger team in a larger product org and create that cultural shift. I don't know if we've figured out the silver bullet yet. We're all kind of hands on deck figuring it out together.
This sounds a lot like what entrepreneurship and internal innovation teams were supposed to do, and then they got phased out because they weren't really delivering applied lessons or anything really to market. But you guys are quite honestly like a lab inside your team trying to push product and push ideas. Does anybody in your team come from that kind of entrepreneurship or innovation team background?
I think a few of us, even within Klaviyo, we have teams that do work like that. So we've had at least exposure to that kind of work dynamic. We have a lot of designers, but also data scientists, engineers, PMs who come from early startup stage environments, which I think is a great type of model to follow in this new team dynamic. It's really about shipping really fast, using your gut sometimes, failing really fast. That's a big part of it. So making decisions on the fly. So if you have sort of that experience working in like an incubator style environment, that can serve you really well in this space.
Your customers, businesses, they really come to you to leverage that data and make smarter marketing decisions and automate workflows. You're really the perfect scenario for leveraging AI. From the outside, it looks like working with AI is almost like giving your team like a superpower. It's like someone came in from a foreign world and says, "Hey, here's this new technology. Find a way to leverage it." I'm just wondering, has this been almost too hard to deal with? And interestingly, that's the feedback we've gotten from other teams where they're just unsure what to do with this, and everything's just ideating.
Yeah, I would say data is a very powerful thing, and it's also a very sensitive and precious thing, especially to our users. We have a lot of very data savvy users who are doing super interesting things with their data that rival some AI models. So that is our customer, and they they want to own their data. They want to have control over their data. They want to know their data is being used responsibly, intelligently, predictably, and accurately. And when it comes to adopting AI into your workflow, you kind of have to be ready to let go of some of that control of your data and trust that the AI, it's actually a really hard thing to get users used to, and an even harder thing to convince them to use and figure out how to integrate it in the right way into their workflow. Let AI take the wheel with your data, but that's not necessarily what they're always comfortable with. So what you have to do is present this superpower in a way in the UX where the user is still in the driver's seat. You have to find the right balance of offering control in this new world of automation. And that's a really, really challenging line to walk as a designer.
Yeah. Brittany and I worked on a couple of projects for Spotify on their data product. And what we found is what we call it is basically like a data maturity model, where people at the top end of the data maturity model really understand the complexity of data, how to leverage it. They want to manipulate it as much as possible. Where people lower down, they just want to be told what to do with it. I can imagine that in the scope of UX, this creates a lot of complexity because it means that some of the users literally don't want the innovative interface. They just want what they've always had with some boosts, where other people, they want, like an Oracle type analogy.
I Absolutely, I've encountered it. We have a variety of users from the very data savvy to the, hey, here are the keys to the car, just drive it for me. When it comes to designing the experience around this, I kind of think of it as a, a big onion that you have to present to your user. And if they want to peel back the layers of the onion, they can. So, and if they don't want to, they don't have to. So the whole onion is the automated process. We'll do this all for you. AI can do this all for you. But for those users who are interested or protective of their data or just highly data savvy that they want to dig deeper, we provide them that path. Giving them that additional reassurance and transparency is really important in the UX. At the same time, something magical about AI is what gets users hooked. So there is an element of automation and mystery and magic that you want to keep in the experience.
You mentioned at the very beginning about how you're sort of new to this, you're learning as you go. We're all sort of building the plane while we fly it. Unless you've been around AI in academic settings, you're likely pretty new to trying to figure out, these tools, what they can do. Were there any fails or false starts
that really taught you some important lessons as you've been learning this, as you've been going along, that you could share? Many. I'll share two. The first one would be when I first learned what LLMs could do, I thought we were headed toward a new frontier of the user interface. I thought all of our interactions would be replaced by natural language, forget about form fields, drag and drops, WYSIWYG editors, etc. What could be a more intuitive experience than using your own words? That was very untrue in reality. Turns out verbalizing what's in your head is actually really hard and not always the best mode of communication. Same is true in real life. Sometimes it's easier to give an instruction or say something out loud, but sometimes it's easier to just point to something, or sometimes it's easier to just turn off the light instead of telling Siri to do it for you. So I would say a big lesson for me would be that AI or natural language is not the silver bullet I thought it once would be, and that would drastically change everything right away. It's more something in the middle. Another lesson I have learned would be around users' expectations of AI. So in most cases, we talk about generative AI or LLMs. When we talk about those, we're talking about the context of using natural language to make experiences faster or more intuitive or easier. And then when we're talking about machine learning AI, we're talking about using algorithms to make the experience more personalized or predictive or smarter. And a lot of the tooling I've seen so far and built as well really is focused in one space or another. But what I've learned is that users actually don't care if it's an LLM tool or a machine learning tool. It's all AI, and they expect that tooling to be both easier and smarter. It's not enough to have a generative AI experience that's easier or faster if the output isn't also extremely personalized and better than what you could have come up with on your own. And similarly, it's not enough to have a machine learning tool that delivers incredibly personalized or smart insights if those outputs aren't extremely easy and fast to generate and digest. So there really has to be this marriage of the two, I think, that because the bar is just very high. It's a lot higher than I anticipated.
That's super interesting. I really love that first one where we all thought that the AI was going to change the game. And I just go back to remembering what Siri and Google Assistant were like back then. We thought the natural language was here. And, we're talking about 13 years ago now. Our previous conversation, you hinted that you learned quite quickly that natural language just doesn't work in business settings as much. I don't know if you can help explain a little bit more of what you've learned specifically related to LLM's kind of ceiling as like a user interface.
I think what I've learned since releasing a few of these tools is there are use cases where engaging with an LLM or using natural language is advantageous. And there are situations where the classic interface that we have is actually easier. So I can give an example of segmentation tool when you're building out a user segment and you want users who are female, age 25 to 54, who live in the Northeast. That first part of the segment might actually be pretty straightforward and easy to use through our conditional drop-down field. Whereas building out users who live in the Northeast is actually a much more complicated task in the interface. You have to collect all of the different zip codes in the area, connect them through AND logic or logic rather, and that can be very tedious. So we've seen a lot of users hop back and forth between our classic tooling and our natural language tooling in a way that I didn't anticipate. And they're kind of evaluating on the fly which is the easier mode of interaction for a given moment in time.
It makes me think about when Intercom and other automated customer service tools came online. Like they're great for businesses, but for better or worse, they're often a worse experience for users in terms of getting complete resolutions. They're great for getting summaries, but not good for getting personalized solution sets. It seems like we're kind of in that point right now where the AIs are really helping get one step further, but they're not really transforming what users are capable of. I'm wondering from the perspective of Klaviyo, because quite literally, your job is to make data as useful and actionable as possible. And that's quite a big vision statement. I'm wondering if your team can imagine new possibilities for what customers might want 5 years from now, and that you're already starting to build for that, or if you're focused very much on like the granular, like, let's just get this tech right before we start taking big steps.
As the designer in this space, the majority of what I'm doing is creating vision prototypes of what this technology could look like in 5 to 10 years. How could this change our interface? I have prototypes of Copilot embedded in our product or natural language input field that are merged with search functionality. There's a lot of tools that I'm playing with to imagine this future. And so we kind of start there and then we pair it back into, well, what can this technology actually do today? And what can it do well? And also, where is the right place to integrate this into our product? We're often working in other domain spaces. So there's a lot of technical hurdles that we're up against, a lot of domain boundaries we're up against. So you start with the big picture of, yeah, this would be so cool if we could build this and let's work toward it, but let's figure out the path to get there today.
What advice would you give to a team that's deciding whether to embark on this AI product process? Would you encourage them to think big and then go backwards from there? Or is it to, iterate on the tooling that they already have?
Oh gosh. Yes, and it's I would encourage folks to look at the big picture, design the future state, maybe budget a chunk of your time and resources as a team to that exploratory work of let's just play for a little bit and see what we can build that nobody's asking for, and kind of have that sectioned off when you enter each quarter cycle, and then use the rest of your time to really solve problems in the way a typical product team would work. AI, you don't want to just design AI for AI's sake, but there is benefit to doing that at least a little bit. For the most part, you want to make sure you're using AI in an application that actually makes sense and is actually solving a problem that exists today. So if you can figure out that balance of how to allocate your time as a team, that to me would be the ideal approach.
Working with some product teams earlier this year, I had to explore exactly this, what the future could be for their business. And I'd come back to them after doing the research, and it's basically, don't bother doing this unless you can achieve, this threshold. That's the threshold where it becomes actually better than what it is today. And then, fast forward a month or two, the production version is just pointless, because once it filters through an organization and the culture of just, build and deploy, all the magic gets sucked out of it. Do you have any recommendations again for a team that's starting out on how to stay focused on what it could be rather than what you're capable of?
I experienced this a lot. I kind of alluded to this before, where we might design this ideal user experience where, AI is front and center and it's seamlessly integrated into your workflow, so much so that you don't even know that it's leveraging AI. And you might come up with this really cool concept or design. And in the course of figuring out not only what the tech can do or what the model can do, but also going through the process of your normal product development life cycle and the barriers you might be up against that you didn't predict, that design can get watered down. So I think because the landscape is changing so fast every day, what you might need to table in a given day for later, don't push it off the table entirely, because it might not be doable today, but it might be doable tomorrow. So always keep that in your line of sight and revisit it regularly and say, hey, is the model worthy of this experience yet? Keeping that in mind, there's some pretty major shifts in how we plan for and how we start to do this work. How do you expect or believe that the role of product managers and researchers will need to shift to allow this magic to continue to be feasible within organization rather than the status quo? We just all need to start working even more flexibly than we ever have before, and be willing to fail faster than we ever have before, and alter our road mapping, alter our team budget, altering our dynamic as a product pod in a way that is conducive to designing and building both for the future, but also today. We just need to not be afraid of challenging the current mode of collaboration that we're all accustomed to, and be ready to grow and change.
This shift in how product teams and product orgs needs to be built is the sort of thing a lot of people have been advocating for a decade now, that we become too focused on requirements and not enough on the problems, that we become too focused on hitting those KPIs rather than exceeding them. Have you seen anything that makes you believe this time it's going to stick versus all the other times that there's been advocacy for a change in the product org?
I want to believe this time it's going to stick because it has to. This is the first time in my career. There's not much I can really learn from or model after. And the nature of the technology, I mean, we see it in the world at large. We're all scrambling to figure out, what is AI going to do? How big is it going to get? Is it taking all of our jobs? There's mass conversation happening. We don't know what the future looks like with this. We're literally figuring it out as we go. So by necessity, we have to change the way we play with that technology and plan for that technology. And we have to be ready to pivot. We have to be ready to change at the drop of a hat. It's just, there's no other way.
You use the word necessity. It brings to mind something, which is obviously, Google or Salesforce have the resources to exceed what you guys are trying to do there. They have the possibility of eating up the market, but everything you've outlined in terms of culture and vision and the need to change makes me think that mid and smaller size organizations are going to have an advantage, because you're in survival mode. You're in this place where you have to get this right. And I'm really intrigued by that, because the more I work with enterprise, the more I recognize that they're not in a rush to change. What's the urgency level in an org like Klaviyo or those even of your clients to get this right?
That's a really interesting point. I think you're right in that some of these larger organizations, the bureaucracy in the way of product development is so set in stone that it's hard to adapt to a new way of working. On the flip side, those are the companies that have the resources and the data to build the products to the level that they need to be to meet users' expectation. Whereas on the flip side, these smaller companies and earlier stage startups have the fluidity and the flexibility of working faster and on the fly, but they might not have the same access to resources. What I think is special about Klaviyo is we're actually somewhere in the middle. We do have some structure, obviously, to our product org, but we very much still have a startup mentality, which is why I love working there. We're always challenging ourselves in the way we do things, and we're always willing to adapt and change. And at the same time, we have so much data and customers who are willing to grow and learn with us. So we have the resources at our disposal to build great technology. So I'm very hopeful that we're in a good position to really get there from both angles.
Amazing.
It's clear that you have a very collaborative team where everyone wants to really figure this out together. There are going to be a lot of designers and product team members who maybe don't feel that they have that, and they're feeling a bit concerned about how do they help their company go from survival to thriving with this new tech. Are there any resources or advice that you encourage other designers and product managers to explore to build good AI products? Yes. So before sharing resources, what I'll say is I would encourage a lot of product teams to not think of AI as this separate world or this separate product that they have to advocate for or be a part of in order to push it forward at their company. I would think of AI as this new tool in our design toolkit. Just as we can use color to signal system status or use tables to organize data or loading states to communicate progress, you now have AI in your design toolkit. So as you're going through your design process, as you're working with your product teams, bring that into the conversation. If you're holding for example, like how might we brainstorm? Think, how might we use large language models to make this interaction easier? How might we use machine learning to make this recommendation a little more personalized? How might we automate this mundane process for our users using AI? There are a lot of ways to just turn to AI as another paint on our canvas to building products. And that can be a lot easier if you approach it that way than say, hey, here's this huge AI product I want to build and this massive change I want to make to our company that I can't actually influence yet. You can influence at a much smaller, more attainable level. And then just in terms of resources, there's so many out there and they're changing all the time. I'd say one of the biggest challenges of working in this space is just keeping up with what's happening in the industry and with the technology. So I would say subscribe to various newsletters, have that information reach your inbox daily. Ben's Bites is a great one. The Neuron is a great one. I would say keep up with leaders in the industry who are talking about this space. John Mita, Dharma Shah, Oveta Sampson, Jacob Nielsen are all putting out great content. Follow them on LinkedIn. I eat up everything they say. Podcasts, I would say, like this one, it's just hearing what other companies are doing, how other teams are thinking about this space is just going to hopefully set off light bulbs for you. Keeping up with studies coming out of Nielsen and how users are interacting with these tools, attending conferences. There's so many resources just to get insight into what's actually happening. Because like we said earlier in this podcast, we're all learning on the fly. We all have no idea where this is really going. And we have to just feed off of each other and learn from each other.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's been a wonderful conversation to really dig deep into the future of product teams. And maybe it's like a back to the future thing where they're going to start operating the way they should have. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun talking to you both.
Thank you for listening to the Design of AI podcast. The show is hosted by Brittany Hobbs and Arpi Drag-Figueredo. Subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple to get our latest episodes. We speak to leaders at the forefront of AI to learn how great AI products are designed and how they're transforming industries. To contact us, visit our website, designof.ai.